Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, this time next week, MPs will be into the 11th hour of what's expected to be a mammoth session of crunch votes on amendments that could decide the shape of Brexit. Tonight, the landscape shifted a little when details emerged of a new policy from Labour. More of that in a few moments. But first, over the next week, Theresa May is also planning to publish details of how she intends to guarantee there won't be a hard border in Northern Ireland, regardless of the outcome of the negotiations. This is known as the Backstop. In Brussels, there are positive noises about how this might help Britain make progress at an EU summit later this month. But Newsnight has learned of a fundamental disagreement between the UK and the EU, which goes to the heart of the problem. Our political editor, Nick Watt, is in Northern Ireland.
A journey across the Irish Sea from Scotland comes to a gentle end at the port of Larne in Northern Ireland. These two parts of the UK have been intertwined for centuries, and today this port could find itself at the heart of the Brexit negotiations. Larne is a UK port serving one UK destination, Cairnryan in Scotland. The assumption that crossings from Larne would be unchanged by Brexit is being questioned once again. The EU sees Theresa May's proposals for a possible backstop for Northern Ireland as only half a solution, and it still has its eye on creating a single EU regulatory zone on the island of Ireland. This change would turn this overwhelmingly unionist port town into an internal UK border post, an unconscionable step towards the breakup of the UK in the eyes of Theresa May and her DUP allies. A border down the Irish Sea doesn't seem to bother Brussels. Newsnight understands that the EU dismissed to Theresa May's face her original idea for the backstop. That is, when it comes to North-South cooperation in Ireland, the UK should fully align with the EU. Downing Street believes its new ideas for the backstop largely supersede the December deal. But EU officials have told me that alignment is still a live issue in Ireland. Downing Street is being told that as long as the Prime Minister's Brexit red lines remain in place, full alignment can only take place between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. This account, hotly contested by the UK, would mean a border down the Irish Sea.
If you talk about trouble along the border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic and opposition to checkpoints like that, you would find exactly the same, that unionists would be saying, we will not accept that we're part of the United Kingdom and yet we're restricted from travelling and doing trade with other parts of the United Kingdom. And I think that this is one of the things which has not been focused on so far. We hear about all of the opposition and protests that Republicans would launch against such border treatment. Well, unionists wouldn't behave any differently.
So you think...
Except I don't think that unionists would be threatening to blow up parts of their own country, but there certainly would be opposition, and I believe that there would be physical opposition too.
I've spoken to a senior unionist who said the EU would do well to remember the history of this corner of Northern Ireland. An early attempt at power sharing way back in 1974 was brought down when loyalists walked out of Northern Ireland's largest power station at Ballylumford, just over the harbour from Larne.
The phasing out of Ballylumford was by far the most serious development yet in a worsening crisis.
The Loyalists showed they had the ability to get their own way in the 1970s, and they will show their resolve again if pressed. The DUP, which supported the strike, is sticking with Theresa May for the moment because they are confident she will allow no divergence between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. But here's the issue. Checks are already in place for farm machinery and livestock imported from Great Britain. Northern Ireland is keen to ensure its agricultural industry is not contaminated from across the water.
These agricultural vehicles came off a ferry in Larne after the crossing from Scotland. As they were unloaded, they were inspected to make sure they meet Northern Ireland's strict hygiene rules with no stray agricultural dirt in sight. If any vehicle fails that test, they are put on the first available boat back to Great Britain.
Unionists see no contradiction in demanding no border down the Irish Sea when inspections already take place.
Those checks are checks which are agreed as a result of legislation within the United Kingdom. And the movements of cattle, for example, to ensure that they're not carrying disease into Northern Ireland. That's part of UK legislation. It's not an international border. It's not introducing checks for another constitutional entity.
But nationalists say unionists are trying to have it both ways.
They can't just cherry pick around these sort of things. There already is special status for the North in different areas, but apart from Brexit, of course. The DUP seem happy to have a special status here in the North for many issues such as marriage equality, such as language rights and such as women's rights to healthcare. Sinn Féin don't want to see a hard border here in Ireland or in the Irish Sea.
For centuries, the history of Ireland, north and south, has been shaped by the traffic plying this narrow strip of sea. Now, this spectacular coastline is returning to the fore as these islands hammer out new relations in the age of Brexit.
Well, Nick is still in Northern Ireland for us. He joins us now from Belfast and has details of a change in direction on Brexit tonight from the Labour Party. Nick, just tell us what they've announced.
That's right, Labour's policy on Brexit evolving once again. Last summer they said the UK should be a member of a customs union, and this evening they've announced that they will amend the EU withdrawal bill, seek to amend it to ensure that the UK has full access to the EU's internal market. They're trying to do two things here. Firstly, they want to ensure that the UK would have tariff-free access to the single market. They don't believe that's going to happen under the government's plans. But secondly, they say they will preserve their demand that the UK cannot be a rule taker because they talk about taking part in shared institutions and shared regulations.
But where does this leave things then?
Well, strong Labour Remainers are bitterly disappointed and strong Brexiteers are absolutely delighted. One said to me, "Thanks, Jez, you're the man." Now, the reason why they both have those thoughts is they both agree that this is likely to kill off any hope of the House of Commons voting to uphold a House of Lords vote to keep the UK in the single market through membership of the European Economic Area. The only way that vote could be covered, really, is if the Labour frontbench voted for it, and they've now got their milder amendment, and they will not be voting for that EEA one next week.
Nick, thanks very much. Nick in Belfast there.